Against the skyline of Paris, the Notre Dame Cathedral has risen from the ashes. Its official reopening marked by Paris Archbishop Laurent Ulrich knocking on the once shuttered doors. Inside, led by French President Emmanuel Macron, dignitaries and clergy rose to applaud the hundreds of Paris firefighters who fought for hours to douse the flames.
Part of my bread and butter is being a carpenter, woodworker, craftsman, all of the above. And I studied it briefly in Philadelphia and the surrounding area. And we have some family members in the trade. It's kind of in our blood, really. And took a lot of pride in that. So for several years now, I've been involved since around 2007, 2008, I want to say, off and on. And we've had the privilege of, like I said, having a family member who has like the old school wood shop and, with all the machines, the joiners, the planers, the clamps, like the saws, everything. And it's been great to learn an apprentice under someone like that. And it reminds me of like how guilds used to be before unions. And I've done that for several years now, over a decade about. And it's something that rewarding to me. I love studying architecture. I studied historical preservation as well. And I've worked with various Philadelphia craftsmen and furniture makers over the years. We did a lot of hardwood tables, credenzas, and custom cabinetry, doors, flooring, beams, you name it. I've worked in all various aspects of the woodworking field, and this is kind of a quick resume. Maybe I'll put this on my LinkedIn.
So when all of this went down, actually, one of the first conversations, and obviously with the fire in 2019, I remember having a conversation with you, and I didn't realize how much you just knew about the general construction of Notre Dame and of the architecture. And, I can tell you like the basic political facts, 1163, and it was, Louis VII, and the final stone, the main structure was laid by Louis IX. And we actually just talked about him in a couple of recent episodes, having been a Crusader king, Louis IX, also Saint Louis. Mm-hmm. He is the king that St. Louis is named for, Louisiana is named for. But a lot of people don't realize some of the structural innovations and architectural innovations that were done into this. And just take us back to literally the Middle Ages, 1100 AD. What were some of the things that when they decided to build Notre Dame that went into it?
Well, so some of the aspects to look at from kind of the bigger picture, looking in down to a more detailed view, is that, this was a massive structure, and you would need like a lot of community support to get this done. And their plans were devised, drawn up, but then they had to make a commitment to a multi-generational structure. So this thing was built over, I believe it was 170 odd years. And so imagine being a master builder and not living to see like the fulfillment of your project. But they made that commitment anyway. And that's just like a sacrifice that is uncommon these days. And just the commitment that these people had and the passion for religion itself that defined their nation. And, so it came from that. It's a giant structure. And as far as innovation goes, growing up, one of the things that caught my eye, or ear, I should say, is like the flying buttresses. And we used to joke about that in grade school, like, oh, it said butt, and but either way, it just struck my interest.
So
Yeah.
the flying buttresses, they're for me, who's a total layman in this stuff, they're sort of part of the roof structure, but they're actually made of stone. Is that correctly? And those are the pieces on the side that sort of hold it up. They're on like an angle, almost like a
Yes,
J
that's what
angle.
looks like the wings. It's like a wing, like an L shape
Yeah.
almost. It's
So
on
that's
the
why they're called
outside,
flying. Okay.
and it almost looks like it's part of another building because you don't see that much anywhere else. And so usually, and this is like definitive of Gothic architecture, which went on to influence much more of Europe after Notre Dame was completed. So you had like traditional structures, I mean columns, I should say columns, and then a vaulted ceiling. But one of the main features of Gothic architecture is the stained glass, and like that was the innovative hallmark feature of Notre Dame is these massive, very tall stained glass windows. And so when you have that and no stone, that means the wall is going to be very weak. So how could you hold up the ceiling, which is, mind you, like tons and tons and tons of lumber and then lumber wrapped in lead? Like, how would you hold that up? So they devised this thing called a flying buttress to support the vaulted roof above to take the weight off of the roof and then divide it down diagonally and then vertically again back to the ground through these buttresses, and that would allow internally to have it's almost like a floating roof, if you will. So I'm sure the stained glass itself holds some of the weight of the roof, but it definitely alleviates a lot of it. And the point being is like, well, why would you want to have just large windows anyway? But they believed in Christ saying like, I'm the light of the world, you know. So the more light comes in, and keep in mind this is a time when there weren't Bibles either. So innovative techniques were more spiritual, really. Like they had hand tools, everything was done by hand. And, there was also, to correlate with that, just no Bibles aside from which the clergy had at that time. So we didn't have any cell phones, any resources to have each person, each individual walking around with your own Bible, you know, seeing that you could maybe interpret it however you want, but that's a tangent. But
So,
you
so
know,
that let's get back to that roof a little bit. So, and of course, the
hmm
roof is what burned. Tell me
yeah.
about the roof. What was so special about it?
Well, to me also, as an adult, growing up, it was like, oh, flying buttresses. But when I heard it was on fire, it really like, hit me in the chest, because that's made of masterpieces of timber framing, interlocking giant pieces of wood that are also of old growth. And, I didn't realize that at first. I thought for sure it was a roof made out of stone, but I think the reasoning behind it was that it would be lighter and also able to hold the flying buttresses, which is why they used the wood in the first place. But yes, it is even referred to as the forest because there was literally almost a whole entire forest used in this construction of the roof. And if you don't know what old growth is, like old growth is when the tree rings, okay, like the tree rings are very tight together. This creates denser, stronger trees, and generally they're over a century-year old, and they're not from like a managed forest. That's why it's in high demand today because there's not much more of it. And you'll see like memes online saying like this is a 2x4 then, this is a 2x4 now. And back then, most of it was literally 2 inches by 4 inches, but now it's inch and a half, 3.5. But the rings on it. So when you have new growth, it's typically weaker wood, and so the roof was made out of old growth timbers and very strong, like comparable to which these master builders decided to use it anyway, and a lot of it was chosen because of its strength. I mean, nobody would really see it. I believe it was mostly oak and just a very strong species to use. You will see that in churches as well. Most pews are made out of it, structural pieces. And yeah, so the roof was made out of that, but also, which is why it would be a bit of a target, because wood burns easily, much more easily than like solid marble. Nonetheless, though, being that it was old growth, it probably burnt slower. But yeah, it's interesting, well, hey, why did the roof catch on fire? Like, why are these organs, church organs, being lit on fire? Because they're made of wood.
That's fascinating, and I remember you telling me that for the first time a while back when this all happened, and I didn't even realize that. And there was a whole thing, and we'll talk about it in a little bit going forward here, but there was a whole worry early on that perhaps they wouldn't even have the wood to be able to replace the forest because those types of trees just don't exist anywhere in Europe anymore. There's parts of Poland, Bialystok forest, which are preserved, and other areas that are still medieval prehistoric forests, but those types of old growth trees, you just can't find them anywhere else